Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Rock Fantasy YouTube channel, the Rock Fantasy Files. Tonight, in another of our episodes honoring albums celebrating milestone anniversaries. Tonight, we discuss two albums celebrating their 50th anniversaries, with Alice Cooper's School's Out going up against David Bowie's The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. Cooper, Bowie, 72. Thought this would be a fun episode. I made sure that I reached out to my friend Sydney Taylor. Also, you're familiar with her from Hudson Valley Square. She's also a DJ on WMMR Philadelphia, which you guys can listen to all around the world, I guess on the World Wide Web, if you want to check her out on there. And so a little bit about the two albums before we get started. The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, often shortened to Ziggy Stardust, is the fifth studio album by David Bowie, released June 16th in 72. In the UK, through RCA Records, it was co-produced by Bowie and Ken Scott and features Bowie's backing band, the Spiders from Mars, comprising Mick Ronson, Trevor Bolder, and Mick Woodmansey. Most of the songs were written around the same time as Bowie's previous album, Hunky Dory. After that album was completed, recording for Ziggy Stardust commenced in November of 71 at Trident Studios in London. Further sessions in early February 72. Now we move over to School's Out. I don't have all my info because I kind of spaced it today on that, but School's Out is the fifth studio album by American rock band Alice Cooper, released in 1972. Of course, following from the success of Killers, School's Out reached number 2 on the Billboard 200 chart. And the single School's Out reached number 7 on the Billboard Hot 100. It was recorded and remixed at the record plant in New York and at Alice Cooper's mansion, Connecticut. So we're going to get started on this, and it should be a fun battle. I'm going to reach out and go over to Mr. Ralph, Count Ralphus. He's our local metal historian, and he always has the coolest props, and I can see he's got some props up from Mr. Cooper. He's got the Chiller Theater glass. I got to meet Alice at Chiller Theater with a good friend of mine, and he signed her Blacklight poster, which I have the same one, but I didn't get mine signed at the time. So, oh yeah,
I met him that day for the first time.
You were there too? We were all there.
Yeah.
I mean, he was there a couple times.
I was like a little baby though. That's so funny.
Yeah, how many years ago was that, Ralph?
I don't know. It was the week that Peter Steele died, because I'm wearing a typo negative hat in the picture. So
Oh, okay.
Remember,
it was 2010.
Yeah, 2010.
All right.
Passed away.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was probably there at the same time. I know he's done Chiller a couple times. I was hoping he'd come back around because I have the Alice Cooper pinball machine, and I would love to get that backlash signed. Get this game signed itself. Well, go ahead, Ralph. Sorry.
So who are we starting with?
We're going to start off with the David Bowie album, and then we'll wrap back around and get the Cooper album, and then we'll see which one you like better.
Okay. So for number 3, I'm going with 5 Years. I think it's got a real Pink Floyd vibe to it, and I hear a lot of Pink Floyd vibe on this album. I know Bowie was a huge fan of Pink Floyd, especially in the early days with Syd Barrett in the band. And he used to be around them a lot back in the day. So I think a lot of that rubbed off on him. There's 11 tracks on this album, and 4 of them have the word star in it. For number 2, I'm going with Suffragette City. I love that. It's a good upbeat one. And, for number 1, the reason I started paying attention to Bowie, because like in the 80s growing up as a kid, I was a big metalhead. And Bowie at the time was doing all that pop stuff, and I didn't really know his back stuff too good. Just a few of the hit songs I knew. But then I discovered, I watched the vampire movie, The Hunger, starring David Bowie. And in the beginning of that movie, Bauhaus is playing the song Bella Lugosi's Dead. And I became a huge Bauhaus fan. And on one of their albums, they do Ziggy Stardust. So then I became a fan of that song, not even realizing like that it was a cover. And then when I heard the original, I realized how close it was to the original, and it made me start paying attention to David Bowie more. And it's like how Danzig is considered like the evil Elvis. Bauhaus is kind of like the evil Bowie. Yeah. So Bauhaus, actually a cover song, got me into David Bowie's early stuff, you know. So yeah, Ziggy Stardust is my number one, and I rated 7.
Okay, number 7. Let's drop it over to Rose. Welcome.
Hi.
And Rose is one of my number one people that run my brick and mortar shop here in New York State. And thanks for joining us tonight.
Hi. So anybody who knows me knows I'm a huge, huge, huge David Bowie fan. It's cool that Ralph mentioned The Hunger too, because I feel like with it's a little less David Bowie related, but I do feel like that movie and that soundtrack birthed a lot of goths and a lot of Bauhaus fans. So I appreciate that. And also a movie is what got me into David Bowie, because when I was a little kid, I should have the soundtrack here. The Labyrinth. I was completely obsessed with this movie. I think I got this copy on vinyl when I was like 12 or something, but I was literally wore out a VHS tape, played it until it would not play anymore. Still just as bad. I'm on like my 4th DVD because I loan it to people that haven't seen the movie and I'm like, you got to see it. And then I never get it back. So I was a huge fan of David Bowie when I was a kid because of that movie. And then I was lucky enough to be in a household where like, if you were interested in any sort of musical artist, like immediately was like, well, there's this and there's this and there's this and there's this, even if it wasn't something my parents were into. So my love of David Bowie was definitely very much encouraged. And this is my favorite David Bowie album. I think Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars is one of the most important albums in rock and roll history. It's definitely up there. It partially because I think that it plays through perfectly. It's one of those albums that there isn't a single track on it that I would skip. There isn't anything that I think is unnecessary. There's nothing extra. There's no filler. Every single song is good. Even the ones that people sleep on a lot, like It Ain't Easy or Hang On to Yourself, like those ones weren't like the hits, but they're still really good, solid songs that are fun to listen to. And I think that the album is also laid out perfectly. It has one of the best openers and one of the best closers of any album I can think of. 5 Years is one of my favorite songs ever. And it's also, I think, one of the boldest and most consistently relevant songs of its time, or maybe ever. It keeps being lyrically consistently relevant, especially in America, forever. And it probably will continue to be because we are the way we are. And then the jacket of having Rock and Roll Suicide be the closer is also one of my favorite songs. And that song is just like powerful and poignant, and it sounds good, but it's also impressive to listen to. It builds up really loud, the messaging of it and the lyrics of it, like especially when it gets really loud with all the big band noises going on. It says you're not alone. It's very powerful, and it's a great way to end the record. I didn't really necessarily pick out 3 because I don't know that I could. If I was to pull out another song that I particularly love, it would be Suffragette City. Really fun to listen to. It's a jam. I also love Soul Love and Age Daydream. I love all of them. For me, this album is a 10 out of 10.
Okay.
100%.
Very well presentation.
Cool.
Absolutely.
So I guess we'll put this in order. I'm going to go to Ryan next, and then we'll go over to Sydney, and we'll go to Ove and Miles, and round out with me. So, Mr. Ryan, how are you tonight? And welcome. It looks like you've got the battle up behind you. You've got both the contestants showing, Alice and David. So, welcome.
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Stephen? Yeah, so wow. This has been literal hell trying to decide between these 2 records. Like David Bowie, Alice Cooper, 2 of the most important musicians in my entire life to me. Like I wouldn't be the musician I am now. I wouldn't be the listener of music I am now if I hadn't found them. I did find David Bowie first. I was really, really young when I got into him, probably like 8 years old, possibly. I don't know. It was something around there. And so my dad had a whole book of CDs and stuff, like a whole catalog of them. And I was looking through them, and he had one on it, and written on it said Ziggy, the rise and fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders of Mars. I'm like, it's kind of a cool name. I'll give that a try. Like, and so I put it on, and I know that one thing that stood out to me that very first time of listening to it is that the title track had maybe the greatest guitar tone I had ever heard of all time on it. Like, holy crap. And at that point in time too, other than like actual like metal music that I was getting into, like some Black Sabbath and things like that, it was one of the heaviest songs I had heard. Because even though it is like a glam rock type of song, that guitar sound is so heavy, and David's vocal performance is so aggressive on it during certain parts. So that one right away I fell in love with. And as I've listened to this album more and more times throughout life, I've learned to love it so much. I don't know if it's necessarily my favorite David Bowie album. Whenever I listen to it, it's my favorite David Bowie album, but there's so many great ones. So I just don't know. But I think it's just a perfectly produced record. It's perfectly arranged. I mean, Mick Ronson had a lot to do with that as well as Bowie. I mean, they were just a wonderful team together, and I just think that so many talented musicians on here. All the tracks are fantastic. I'd say if I had to do a top 3 of them, my number 3 is Soul Love. I just love that song. The melodies on it with his vocals are just so hooky right away. And they just make me emotional. Like, it's just such a beautiful song vocally. And then you have that awesome saxophone solo on it. You have the great chorus, which kind of picks up a little bit. It's just super triumphant and awesome. Just fantastic track. My number 2 is going to be Moon Age Daydream. Another song that I just absolutely love. I think that the lyrics are so funny and scattered. I mean, that was like the intent with them. They weren't supposed to make much sense at all. And I just love it. It just takes you to a whole different world. Once again, amazing guitar tone on this one. I love that little there in the middle of the song. That's so catchy. I don't know. This is my secret karaoke song whenever I go to the bar. Like, I just love this song so much.
An excellent karaoke song.
It is. It's so fun. But yeah, I don't know. I love that song. And then number 1, just because it's the song that got me into Bowie, and like I said, maybe the greatest guitar tone, even at this point, I've ever heard, Ziggy Stardust. Just I love the lyrics on this one. I love the aggression that he has on it. I love the beauty of those opening guitar chords. It's just like so mind-blowing. And then the whole band comes in. It's just fantastic. But to narrow it down to 3 tracks is so hard because everything on this album's amazing, and it is a 10 out of 10 record for me.
Okay. Cool. Pass the record over to Sydney. How you doing? It's your turn.
Yeah, so it's funny that Rose mentioned Labyrinth, because that was where I also got my start with David Bowie. I saw that movie. My mom showed me that for the first time when I was around 5 years old. I was either 4 or 5, and loved it. I loved David Bowie immediately, like loved the songs. And because I fell in love with that movie so much, my parents got me his like greatest hits album at the time, which is called Best of Bowie. And so instead of, I used to listen to the radio, but instead of listening to the radio when I got into Bowie, I would listen to that album when I was going to sleep when I was like 6 years old. And I learned every single song, like knew the words to Space Oddity at 6 years old. It was like would sing it. I loved Bowie. He was the first musician I ever loved before Alice even. He's the whole reason that I got into rock, and the first time I ever felt real passion for something in my whole life was David Bowie. So this album, you know, I was very familiar when I became a fan of, you know, a lot of the songs, obviously hearing them on that greatest hits disc. Obviously Ziggy Stardust, Suffragette City, Starman, a lot of that stuff. But you know, I went through a period, because obviously I started like Bowie when I was a very, you know, young kid, kind of grew up and then really got back into rock. And that's when I really did a deep dive of a lot of his albums and listened to stuff in its entirety. And I wouldn't say that this is my favorite David Bowie record. Hunky Dory would probably take that spot for me. That's like a masterpiece, but this is right behind it. This would probably be like my second favorite. It's just, I agree with Ryan and Rose. It's a 10 out of 10. Like it really, I mean, it's perfect. It was this whole era of, you know, glam rock that I loved so much. You know, not only was it the music, but it was the image at the time. And I mean, obviously he had done stuff, you know, like Aladdin Sane, which was going to be coming up and everything, but it was just the image and everything that was brought to the stage with this album, and all of the boundaries that he broke with it too. You know, nobody had seen anybody, you know, dressed like that and doing, you know, kind of like gender fluid stuff on stage at that time, which was a really big revolutionary thing that came with this record. So, I mean, like it's already been said, 5 Years is such a great opener. I love So Love. I think that, like Ryan was saying, is such an underrated track from this. I never hear that one get mentioned. So good. Starman still is hard to listen to because all I can think about when I think of that song is his passing, which is just devastating. But so that one's still hard to listen to. But Age Daydream, obviously a classic. Lady Stardust is another one of my favorites on this record. Another kind of underrated gem, I feel. You know, like I said, you have the classics. Suffragette City is just wham bam, thank you, ma'am. Like, you know, you can hear that in your head. All you have to do is just hear the title of the song, and you're like, wham bam, thank you, ma'am, like immediately. But no, I mean, it's just a classic. There's not, like Rose said, not one bad song on this entire record. And I have the physical copy I've been reading the back off of. And one of my favorite parts of this is on the back, it says at the very bottom, to be played at maximum volume, which is like, it's just so good. So yeah, I mean, it's really hard to pick three favorites. I guess if I had to, Ziggy Stardust would be my number one. That one like takes me back to being a kid. That's so hard. It's really hard. Like I'm trying. Suffragette City, probably just because again, it's like a really nostalgic song for me. And probably Age Daydream, but Starman's really close to it. It's hard. It's a perfect record. Got nothing bad to say. So yeah, I love David Bowie. He's my fave.
Thank you. We're gonna go all the way to Norway now. Adobe.
Hello.
You're on the spot. You're staying up all night to hang out with us. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome. I guess I gotta get into a New York groove. David Bowie. First time I heard him, I believe it was the movie I saw, The Falcon and the Snowman, and the song "Afraid of Americans." Was the first time I heard David Bowie. I didn't know who he was. I was just so taken by that song. And then I got the DVD for Ziggy Stardust, the motion picture, the DVD. And I bought it and I put it on. And I remember my mom said, "What is this devilry?" Yep, that one. So that was my introduction to Bowie. And it's just, and I saw Cat People and that song, Putting Out Fire with Gasoline. And it was just so cool thinking about what he said, putting out fire with gasoline. And it's just magical song. So from there, it's just got more and more albums. So for Ziggy Stardust, I can't say anything really about the album that Rose didn't really say, because that was a perfect presentation. So I'm just going to go to the songs I really like from the album. I'm kind of like, I like my own songs. I always like my own songs. I don't go for if everybody else likes it. I'm like, okay, it's good, but I'm like, I like to get my own songs. So I'll start with number 3. For me is So Love. It's magical. And for number 2, I'll go Ain't Easy. Ain't Easy. It's just the chorus, everything is just, it's nothing like it. And for my number 1, I'm going to go with Lady Stardust, because he sings so passionate that song. He sings so, I don't know, soulfully, or it's just, it's you just want to cry inside because it's so beautiful. But like Sid and Rose and everybody has said, it's like it's 10 out of 10 album. It's like it's a landmark.
Okay. Cool. All right, so now we're going to move ourselves down to our favorite Cajun guy here from Louisiana. We got Miles from Miles and Metal. And welcome. And hey, guess who decided to show up down there? He's drinking soda. Looks like he's laying in bed. Brand's here from Sea of Tranquility too. So Brand, well, let's fill you in real quick. You're going to give your David Bowie. You're up next. So you're going to give your Bowie, and then we're going to loop around for Cooper. So thanks. Miles, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm gonna be honest. I've never been the biggest David Bowie fan. I've heard the popular songs on the radio and everything like that. And if I had to name like one album that I could probably name from David Bowie, it would be this one, even though before doing this, I hadn't heard the whole record all the way through. And I really wanted to do this because of the fact that, David Bowie obviously passed away. And I wanted to, experience his music and get into it and see if I feel the same way that a lot of people feel about his music. So what was good about me going after all of y'all is because I wanted to see if like what y'all was saying about is the way I felt about the album, listening to it for the first time all the way through. And one thing that Rose said is that there's no fillers in this record. To me, I was interested in all the songs that were on this record. That every song that was coming on, I got into it. I found them catchy. I found them like I'm at work today. I must have listened to this album maybe 3 times, and I was like, and I found myself humming along to some songs when they came on. I was like, yeah, I really do enjoy this, what's on this record. And the 3 songs that I really liked off this record a lot was It Ain't Easy. I'm going to put at number 3. That was, I found like the chorus really catchy. And I was driving a forklift today and I had my earbuds in it. And when that song would come on, I would be like, it ain't easy. And then number 2 is Suffragette City. I didn't realize that was a David Bowie song, to be honest with y'all. When the chorus hit, when the chorus hit in, I was like, hold on. I know this song. And then number 1, and I will say this about this song, is out of all the songs listening to them off this record, each time this song came on, it stood out to me. And that's the title track's Ziggy Stardust. When the opening guitars start up, I was like, I automatically tuned in. Like, even when I was listening to the other songs through, when that song started, each time I listened to it, it's like it grabbed my full attention each time that it came on. Maybe I don't have the same amount of love for it as y'all, because I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. And that's just my personal opinion for when I'm listening to it for the first time right now. But I will say that after listening to this record, I really would like to get into exploring more of his albums because it was really interesting listening to this record, and it was really enjoyable for the most part. So a really good record by David Bowie.
Hey, thank you, Miles. And it was kind of like a reaction video for you.
Pretty much.
We're not just rating albums on the Rock Fantasy channel. We're doing reaction videos with Miles.
And
It
it's
just
like
proves that I'm not biased.
it's like
Yes,
when
yes.
it's like when I was growing up and I was young, and I know I said it before, but when I was young, like with my dad getting me into music, it was more like Van Halen, Black Sabbath, and all the more heavier stuff. So
Yeah.
like going back into like the kind of the softer stuff, it you know, because this ain't the heaviest album out there.
No.
You know, maybe I might have skipped over it over the years, but it was a real enjoyable album.
Sure.
Turk Hammett is a fan of this album because you can
Okay.
hear like Leper Messiah Metallica song is taken from the lyrics.
Oh, okay. Well, look who's here. Rand's here. He's a little tardy tonight. Maybe we should make him go last. I guess he is going last. So.
I am
Rand,
going.
welcome.
Oh no, you're good.
Give your 2 cents on the David Bowie Ziggy
Thank you very
Stardust album.
much. Thank you very much. Appreciate you letting me in, being so late. I'm kind of in the same boat that Miles is in. I haven't really heard this album much until I found out we were going to do this, and the first time I heard it all the way through, I'm going to tell you a little story. I was at my ex-girlfriend's brother's house in Philadelphia. We lived in California, of course, and we went over to Philadelphia for a visit. And he loves this album, and his wife did too. And so much, they had 2 big German shepherds. One was named Ziggy, and the other one's named Stardust.
Really?
That's cool. That's cool. That's really cool. I want to get to.
I figured that would be a little story that I could share with you.
That is a good one, yeah.
And then I heard 3 songs off this album on the radio ever since it's been released, but I never bought it myself. Okay, so it's hard for me to kind of talk about the other ones because I just didn't hear them and really heard them, you know. It's different when you're visiting with somebody and they're playing you something and there's all kinds of distractions. And in Philadelphia, everything is nutsoid, you know, and it's crazy city. So everybody that lives there is really, really always said, everything's just moving around all the time, you know. But anyways, the only ones that I could really latch onto that I didn't know was It Ain't Easy. I'm with Miles on that. That's a great chorus. In fact, we were listening to it in the car the other day going down the highway, and I said, "Is this nice song? It's really mellow and everything." And all of a sudden, Bowie's going, "It ain't easy." And my girlfriend said, "Turn that damn thing down." Really, really
fantastic
loud.
song.
I thought that the balance factor of that from the verse to the chorus was like about that far. I liked it. I mean, it's cool, and it's not even a David Bowie song. Somebody, Ronnie Hayes or somebody like that, wrote it. I never heard of him, but he's an American musician from the late '60s. But anyways, the only thing I could really relate to as far as ranking these things in 3 are the ones that I heard the most on the radio over the years, over the 50 years. And I would say that Suffragette City be my number 3.
Okay.
I think Ziggy Stardust is really great. I give that my number 2. And my favorite David Bowie song ever is Starman. So I'm going to give that number 1.
Okay.
Nice.
And are we rating these in 5s or 10s?
1 to 10.
Oh, 1 to 10? Yeah, I'm so new to this album and stuff. I need to be fair to it, but I also need to be fair to you guys too. I'm going to give it a 7.5.
Okay.
Because I've got like other David Bowie albums that I really, really love. And that's the Berlin period. So
That's the fun of doing these shows. We have a couple people on here that haven't listened to it. I mean, I was guilty. I haven't listened to this album in full in years. You just have so much music thrown at you, especially if you have a record store or just where you just have
Yeah.
listened to these and forever.
Yeah,
And you know,
course,
that's
yeah.
I'm in that boat too. And the three songs I'm gonna go with off of this album, Age Daydream, which I fell in love with and wasn't really familiar with the song for many, many years until the Guardians of the Galaxy. So I sound like a teenager now. But because we have the pinball machine in the shop and we have a hack code in it that plays like all the music from the movie. And that, if you're walking around the store, you'll hear that David Bowie song come on all the time. I'm like, and it really grew on me, and I really dig that song. And I agree with Ryan about that one part with and that whole little part. It's so cool. And Suffragette City and Ziggy Stardust are going to be my 1 and 2. I don't know if I like one better than the other, but I just love that whole story of Ziggy. And you hear about David Bowie. Like, I was reading up a lot about this, of course, how he, really took on the persona of Ziggy, and he was going crazy because of the Ziggy Stardust, and he was trying to get away from it and totally playing the part and playing the role. But I'm going to give this album, I'd say, a 9. After listening to it full, I really enjoyed it. More, for years, I think I told Rose that when I was younger, I didn't have any of these albums full. Like in the 70s, I just had Changes One's Bowie. That's the album I had.
Okay.
And I had Changes 2 later on, but I never really, as a younger kid, I didn't have money to buy every record. So that's what I ended up with. And that's what I had on 8-track and probably had it on cassette and had it on rotation in the store. So, but I'll give it that rating. And I guess it's time to kick over to Mr. Alice Cooper and Ralph Cambora. Let's kick it off with you, and we'll go around the same order.
All right. So my first time I remember really liking Alice Cooper was hearing School's Out. In like 5th, 6th, and 7th grade, at the end of the last day of school, the older kid used to come in with a boombox, and he would play School's Out, the song, on a loop in between the periods and classes. And it seemed like the whole school would love it. Like, he would just be walking through the hallways blasting it, and the teachers would let him do it every year. So it became like the anthem for the last day of school. And every time I hear it, even today, I still think of that,
Yeah.
And that ends up being my number 3. I know it's the most played out song on the album, but I'm picking that as my number 3. But so 1986, a lot of the older metal bands start taking out the new thrash bands on tour. And like Black Sabbath took out Anthrax, Ozzy took out Metallica. Well, Alice Cooper took out Megadeth on Peace Sells tour. And me and my friends went mainly because we were big Megadeth fans. We loved the Peace Sells album at the time. It was the first time I ever went to a concert on acid. I was only 16. But so Megadeth were moshing, acting like little idiots the whole time, and all these older Alice Cooper fans are like, what the fuck is going on? People, they were grabbing us and yelling at us, you bang into me, knock my beer over again, I'll knock you out. But so Alice Cooper's coming on, and me and my one friend get right up front row for it. And we knew some of the songs, actually we knew I'm 18 because Anthrax had covered it at the time, so we were waiting for the few songs. But Alice put on such a fucking amazing show. I mean, he had the guillotine out, getting his head chopped off and tripping, seeing that shit front row. And I've been a fan ever since that show. And I ended up collecting everything by him. And I got the original vinyl. I don't got the panties in there though. I didn't
Yeah, I do.
At a Hard Rock Cafe someplace. One of the Hard Rock cafes has the actual desk that they made the album.
The one in Vegas had it now. I don't know if the one in Vegas is still there. I used to stay at the Hard Rock Hotel, and I know that's not there anymore. And the Hard Rock Cafe was out in the parking lot. And that's where the desk was, yes, for years.
Yeah, this was hard one to figure the 3 songs. I mean, I had to mention School's Out because it was the one that got me into it.
Of course.
But, my number 2, I'm going with Blue Turk. It's got like a weird kind of Doorsy feel. The music is like almost lounge music at times, but I just love the lyrics. It's got like my favorite lyrics in it. I love the lyrics on this whole album. I think that's one of the things that makes it a lot better than the Bowie album. To me, that Bowie album, the lyrics are kind of simple and kind of sappy at times. You know, I think the Alice Cooper lyrics are just more fun, and I love his gruff vocal approach on everything. And so my number one, I'm gonna go with My Stars, another song with the word star in it. But great, memorable, upbeat song, and I think it's a great album. I'm gonna give it a 9. It's not my favorite Alice Cooper album, but you know, it's probably the one that got me into him, and he's got such a catalog. For him to be going this strong still all these years later, it's unbelievable.
Oh, for sure.
Put the little guys around.
Oh yeah, the bobblehead.
Bobblehead too. Yeah, I got some other crap, but that's it. I'll go let somebody else go now. But I give it a 9.
Excellent. And now, so if you're taking one album home from the record store and you only got money for one, you're taking the Cooper?
Oh, definitely.
Okay, we got to vote for Cooper. He's up 1-0 here. We're going to go the same order, so we're back over to Rose's corner, and welcome back.
So Alice Cooper, spoiler, I actually chose all the same songs that Ralph did.
Bang.
But Alice Cooper, I feel like Alice Cooper is definitely the artist that I know less about. He was always kind of there. I grew up with Alice Cooper records in the house. I thought that I had a copy of Schools Out, but it must have bit the dust at some point because I couldn't find it. But I know I had that when I was a kid. And I also had Love It to Death, which I still have. And the songs that I remember the most are I'm 18 and School's Out, obviously. And I always really enjoyed them, but I just never really delved super, super deep into Alice Cooper. I always just sort of enjoyed him casually. And I don't think that I've ever really heard an Alice Cooper song that I disliked, but I just never felt that same energy to that same obsession energy that I had with David Bowie. And I haven't listened to this album all the way through in a very long time. I have before, but not in a very, very long time. And when I was listening to it to put this together for this, but I had forgotten how weird of a record this is. Like it's like a little bit, it's like rock and roll, but it's also like kind of Broadway sounding. Like it's like super theatrical. It's a little Motown. It's very, very The Doors, like very Doors influence for sure. Agreed. Definitely heard that. And it's just all over the place. In some places in a good way, and in some places I think maybe not the best way, but overall I think it's a really solid album. I picked the same 3: School's Out, My Stars, and Blue Turk. I really like the bass line. Overall on this album, I really like the use of bass, and I really like comparing this album to Ziggy Stardust, because I feel like there are actually a lot of similar elements, like the Doors influence or the Pink Floyd influence, and in the like use of a lot of interesting instruments. I feel like there's not very many rock bands anymore who can utilize keys and synth and brass and all within it and still have it feel like rock and roll. And both David Bowie and Alice Cooper definitely did that. And you can especially hear it on both of these albums. I do enjoy it. I guess the like I just feel like the weird sounds on this album really work for the most part. And if I had to rank it, I'd probably give it like a 7 out of 10. I feel like I need to reintroduce this album into like my listening repertoire. I feel like I wish that I hadn't been forgetting about it for so long.
Cool.
But if it comes down to this album versus David Bowie, it's gonna be David Bowie every
You're
single time.
buying the Bowie. I already knew that. You
I
warned
knew
me
you knew
about
that.
that. I knew that was going to
She would
happen.
be lying if she said something else.
Well, we're going to pass the record back over to Ryan. It's your turn.
All right. Let's see here. So school's out. I have my vinyl copy here. The whole Alice Cooper band catalog is some of the best albums in hard rock for me. I mean, Muscle of Love a little less so, but I still absolutely love it. But I got into him originally with solo stuff, and I love a lot of that too. At this point in my life, I prefer the band just because I think those albums kind of fit more of what I like, and I think they're consistently amazing. But I've been a huge Alice Cooper fan my entire life, and I can't credit him enough to where I am as a musician, basically. I mean, I got into Bowie first, and then he was a little bit after. So that's kind of a Bowie thing too, because Bowie like opened the floodgates for me. But yeah, this album here, I actually think this is a fantastic one. I slept on it a little bit in my life. It was one that I got into a little later on. I'd say probably in the past 5 years or so, I really got into this album. And every time I listen to it, I like it a little bit more. Honestly, it's a weird album. It's super experimental, and its theatricality to it, and the weird sounds. I know that Zappa discovered the band and produced that first album and stuff, but I think that this one, with some of the weirdness of it, kind of reminds me a little bit of like a Zappa type of vibe at times too. Not quite, but I definitely hear it. And I think this album is actually remarkably consistent. It's weird. I mean, it's not like your traditional hard rock songs. It goes all over the place, from strange little interludes like Street Fight, which has amazing bass playing on it. I love it.
I actually love Street Fight, but I felt like it wasn't quite a real song, so I couldn't pick it. Like it's almost. I actually love that though.
I was in the same boat. And I mean, this album just has a remarkable sense of humor to it. Like you hear the end of Alma Mater, and he's just like, "Oh, you guys aren't going to forget about me, right? Like you're not going to forget about Coop and stuff." Like it's just, it's so funny, but it also resonates. Like, because I mean, I remember graduating high school and like all my friends and stuff, and we're like, oh yeah, we're gonna be friends forever. And then college comes around and you talk to less and less and less of those high school people as you meet more people in college. And then that same thing happens with college, just things move on in life. So that there's kind of like a funny but also solemn end, and then you have the grand finale. But if I had to do my top 3 on this, my number 3 is actually going to be Gutter Cats versus the Jets. I think this song's awesome. I mean, Leonard Bernstein has like a writing credit on it because of like the West Side Story type of stuff that's in it, which is super cool. Because I mean, what hard rock bands kind of referencing like West Side Story in the early 70s? Like that's awesome. And it's just a super cool song. The opening bass riff kind of reminds me a little bit of Dead Babies off of Killer in some ways, which is really high up in my favorite Alice Cooper songs. And it's just an awesome song in general. My number 2, though, is Blue Turk. Oh,
okay.
It's jazzy. It definitely has the Doors influence to it. I love the bass riff. It's so catchy, the awesome little keyboard stuff. And Alice's vocal performance is fantastic on this one too. And also the guitar solos in it are fantastic. They're very subtle, clean tone, but I love it so much. And then my number 1 is going to be My Stars. Just such an amazing song. It starts off real beautiful, but it also rocks super, super hard. There's great riffs on it. One of Alice's best vocal performances. Just fantastic. I know I didn't have Schools Out in my top 3. I thought about it because it's one of the first songs I got into by Alice, but I just think the deep tracks on this album are so good that I had to give a little love to them. So rating wise, I really don't have any flaws. Like, as I said to you guys at the beginning of this, these are 2 of my favorite albums. So it's going to be 10 out of 10. And choosing which one I like the most, I've gone back and forth about 20 times before this episode started, maybe about 20 times during this episode so far. God.
You've only got money to buy one and you're at the record shop.
I'm going to go with Bowie.
All right, Bowie gets the win.
Yeah, it's just so important to me. I wouldn't be an Alice Cooper fan without this album. So I have to give it its due. And the songs on it are just so memorable and well done too.
Well, thanks for your time, Ryan. And we're gonna pass the record back to Sydney. And since I sold her the record, she's gonna tell us about that story. I have a feeling.
Yeah. So Alice is my number one. I am about as diehard as you can get. I could probably do his interviews for him at this point. I know that much. Just a lot of years of studying and reading and watching and listening. I'd first gotten into Alice actually not because of David Bowie, although I think that definitely, I mean, liking that at an early age was probably, a good thing. But my dad had actually gone to see Alice when I was like 9 years old. And, you guys are all familiar with Alice's stage shows. He had thrown out this pair of beads during a song called Dirty Diamonds. And my dad had caught them. And when he came home the next morning, he gave them to me. And for some reason, I found just so much interest and fascination, mostly because I was like, wow, somebody famous had these and now I have them, and that's so cool. I don't know what was going on in my little kid brain, but it was just fascinating. And from that point on, I was just invested in Alice Cooper, was just listen to everything. Met him at Chiller, saw him live. I've seen him 22 times so far. So I'm a little bit obsessed, but it's really funny because when I was getting into records and collecting vinyl, I lived in Middletown, and so I would go to Rock Fantasy. And the first time I went to Rock Fantasy, this was even before I had a turntable, and I was thinking about collecting records. I was like 15, and I went and I immediately went to see because I wanted to get an Alice Cooper record, and I got Schools Out, and it's since been signed, but it does have the panties, which I hardly take off because they will disintegrate in my hands if I do. They're like 50 years old. But I knew at the time I wasn't 100% familiar with like pressings and stuff. But since, then I've learned this is indeed a first pressing because the panties were only available on the record for an extremely limited time because they were flammable and had to be removed after the first run. So I think this was like $10 you sold this.
Oh, probably. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, it had to be $10 less possibly. And aside from the panties, like the record is in perfect condition. Like I hardly ever play it just because I don't want to take the panties on and off.
Yeah.
But great. I always think of that. I'm like, man, you really could have charged me like $200 for that. You charged me $10. But thank you, Steve.
My bad. My bad. I guess you can always come back and buy a bunch of other records when you're in town. So I'll make up for it.
That was a very memorable experience.
I'm so glad that you got that from me because you became such a big fan, and
Yeah, I mean, I know it's hard. I can't really pick if I like Alice solo stuff more than I like the band. I mean, I like it all equally. I've spent so much time listening to every record. This is not my favorite album from the band or Alice solo. It's a great record nonetheless. I mean, obviously Schools Out is a song that every kid, remembered singing, especially me, when I was a kid, last day of school. Other ones, when I did a deep dive on this, when I became a super fan, definitely Gutter Cat versus the Jets, obviously, which you mentioned, which I love that one. I loved Alma Mater because of the fact that, like you were saying, Ryan, like at the end, he's like, "You're gonna remember the coupon." That was just always so memorable to me. Of course, Blue Turk. But for my third one, my third pick, I'm gonna go with My Stars because that one always stood out to me. I saw him recently. He added this to the set list, like this last leg or the leg before, and so I finally got to see him do it live, which was really cool. It's really interesting that he pulled that one out. Number 2, I'd have to say Public Animal, number 9. Love that one.
Yeah.
Super underrated track, I think. I worked in a bar all during the pandemic before I got my radio job, and we played a rock playlist, and that song would always come on, and I couldn't believe it because it's like, no one knows who this is but me. Public Animal, number 9. And then my number 1 in my top 20 Alice Cooper songs ever is Looney Tune. Love that one. Super gritty. Really, like, just Alice's vocals are just so like rough and like just really sounding mean, and got that early kind of like Alice Cooper growl that he obviously became famous for. I mean, there are definitely weird songs on this. I'm, like I said, not going to sit here and say that this is like my favorite Alice Cooper record of all time. I don't listen to this one all the way through all the time. When I do, I enjoy it. I mostly gravitate towards my favorites, and then obviously School's Out, which I wouldn't even put School's Out probably in like my top 20 because I love it, but it's been a little played, even though Alice is my favorite. Yeah, I mean, I love the man. It's really hard for me to pick between the two because these are probably the two most influential artists in my whole life. Like, I would not be me without either of these people. So this is really hard. Honestly, as much as I want to say David Bowie, I think I'm gonna go with Alice.
Okay.
Just because Alice has been the reason for so many things in my life. And he's just say me in the bad times and help me in the good times. And yeah, I have to go with School's Out.
Awesome. And I have to always ask you this question. I probably have before, but you actually were on stage with Nita Strauss, right?
Yeah.
You performed a song with her, did you? Did you sing or?
Yeah, I'd seen her. It was her second solo show that she did back in 2018. She was playing this venue in Philly called the Voltage Lounge. And I've known her since I was about 15. And
Wow.
she saw me, and I was taking pictures that night, and I saw her and said, "Hey," whatever, and she goes, "You want to come up and you want to sing I'm 18?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." She was like, "Okay, like I'll give you the signal when it's time to come up." And I came up, and it was, you can watch it on YouTube, but one of the best things,
I've seen it.
she said, I think you guys are going to know this one. She said, "And Sydney knows it better than anyone." And I was like, oh, that's just so fucking cool. But I love Nita. That was a great experience. Yeah.
Now you also do a podcast too. Are you still doing that actively?
Yeah, I don't do it as much as I want to just because I'm so with the radio thing now.
Sure.
It's
Okay.
been a lot,
Cool.
but I still do it. Yeah. I
Right.
try to.
Sid, do you know any? Do you have any details on the School's Out tour, like the live tour? If you had any specific stage things during that tour or something?
I'm trying to think. The one, specific story I can remember that they detail a lot in the Super Duper Alice Cooper documentary was when they played the Hollywood Bowl on that tour, and Wolfman Jack came out and opened the show, and that they had the panties fly out drop over the crowd. Elton John was there, and he like got a pair.
Wow.
That one, I don't know if they were really, at that point they had already started doing the theatrics. Obviously I could assume that they did, the usual, but I don't know if there's any specific, I think maybe he was getting hung at that point.
Oh.
All the different ways.
It's
This
your
great
turn,
book by-
Ovi.
Yeah.
Is
Great
it my
book by Dennis
turn?
Dunaway. Talks
Ralph
about
is
a lot of
showing a book, I think, right?
Yeah, this great book by Dennis Dunaway talks all about band and all the tours and everything. This is a really great read for any
Nice.
Alice Cooper.
It's
wow.
so good. It's so good. Also, Alice has his own autobiography called Golf Monster, where he talks about some of that stuff as well. Recommend.
Mhm. So Obi, let's hear about what you've got to say about the Alice Cooper record. Then we'll go over to Miles and Rand. And Rand has got a little dog, looks like Daisy, running around the back of the sofa, I see. And then I'll finish this thing up.
Yeah. Well, Alice Cooper for me is, I got into Alice Cooper, or not got into him, but I experienced him first because I was a kid and I saw the Muppet Show.
Aw.
But it obviously was a rerun because that episode was before I was born. But I was like, I was stunned. I was like scared the living daylights out of me with the castle and the theatrics he did on that show and stuff. I'm like, it scarred me for life in a good way. So that's how I never knew his name or anything. But I was just, when I saw the cassette for Hey, you stupid, I'm like, I know that dude. You're giving me nightmares, man. So, and then I got the cassette, and I've been listening to him ever since too. It's both David Bowie and Alice Cooper has been with me for longest of time. Difficult for me because both bands have phenomenal lead guitar players. Both Alice and David Bowie, they are like gods, guitar gods, really, that aren't gotten the recognition I feel they deserve because they play so good. But I don't know if many people know the lead guitar players' names, or either Alice Cooper or David Bowie. If you ask in general, I mean, if you ask Rose or Sid, they know it. But I'm like, if you ask anybody else, they were like, "Oh, I know David Bowie, I know Alice Cooper," but any other band member is like, good as guess as mine.
Mick
Kinda
Ronson
like-
should definitely be just as well known.
Yes.
Yeah, right. That's what I mean.
Which I
So
mean,
it-
that's the reason that the band ended up breaking up, was because everybody, it was a lot of like, "Ooh, Alice Cooper, he's only one person," and everybody else was kind of like giving the middle finger of like,
Yeah.
who cares?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So for me, that David Bowie album takes you kind of like on a space journey, like more a specific journey. Alice Cooper album is kind of like a wild jungle theatric kind of city jungle. I mean, kind of like spooky stuff. So it's such a night and day experience. Those two albums, they are really good. As for the album Schools Out, I haven't really listened to it a lot until lately. So I'm like, what I've been doing, I'm like, why haven't I listened to this album more? I was like blown away by how cool it is and how kind of new thinking and kind of how experimental. And I can't really say much more than Sid or Rose or Ryan or anyone has said so far. But for I take number 3. I will go with My Stars because of the lead guitar riff and all. It's just yeah. And for number 2, I'll take the Blue Turk because it's a magical ride in the concrete jungle. And for number 1, I'll take one it's kind of calm, but it's kind of creepy and cool. Alma Mater, because it's first kind of, I haven't heard Alice Cooper done that type before, and then not really in that much after either. You have elements of it because it's kind of like slow and low key voice, but it's creepy, and Alice Cooper is creepy. He wants to be creepy, and he really does that on that song. So for me, that's kind of what Alice Cooper is about. He's getting under your skin.
Yeah.
I got so positively surprised by how cool this album is. So I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10 too, because I'm like,
Okay.
this is some cool shit.
And what album were you taking home, Moby?
To be honest, I got to be honest with myself and you guys. I like them both really well, but Ziggy Stardust is what I know. It's what I've listened to. It's what I know
Okay.
in and out. Like, I don't need to think. I'm like, if I hear one of the Alice Cooper songs, I will hear it's Alice Cooper, but I gotta jog my memory a bit. But Ziggy Stardust is like, besides School's House, of course, but Ziggy Stardust is like, it's so many songs that just you can sing in your sleep because they are in your DNA. So it's Ziggy Stardust for me.
All right, so David Bowie in the slight lead here, 3-2, as we go back to the swamps of Louisiana to see what Miles is just learning about these two records, and which one do you like better? And let's hear about Alice.
So I've read everything that Alice Cooper is a really nice guy. I've seen everything all about him, but I'm gonna be completely honest. I respect the man. I respect the hell out of him for what he's done for rock, and he's pretty much started like the horror shock rock type deal. But I've never really been a fan of his music, to be honest with you. And one of the songs that really I don't like by Alice Cooper is School's Out.
Oh, you're off the show. Out of here.
Hold on. The reason why is because I was laughing when Ralph was saying how at the last day of school they would always play that song. Same thing with me. Some teacher would play School's Out over the loudspeaker of the school off of her phone, and it sounded like complete dog shit. And I'd be like, oh no, they're not playing this fucking song again. Oh my God.
Oh no.
But
1970s movie. Come on. That's
Alice Cooper fans are gonna be coming to your door.
I'm ready for the negative comments.
But you're gonna get them.
But I will say, listening to this whole album, there were some parts that I really did like Looney Tune. I thought that was a real good song. I thought his vocals on that, his gravelly vocals on that really stood out to me. I did enjoy the song Blue Turk a good bit. And probably my favorite song that I would offer this record was Public Animal Number 9.
Okay.
And
good choice.
But what this album did for me is it did like Rose said, it did some weird shit. Like Gutter Cat versus the Jets, and it did like that weird stuff. And actually I liked Street Fight because it was just it made me laugh the first time I heard it. And I was like, they got cats fighting it. It sounded like cats fighting in an alleyway. And I was like, this is funny. I would say I listened to this album, I think, as much as the David Bowie album 3 times today, because I was going David Bowie, Alice Cooper. The album, the first time I listened to it, I didn't like it that much, but the last 2 times I listened to it, it kind of grew on me, and it really did. Really, the Alice Cooper album that I really do like is the next album, which is $1 Billion Babies. I really do enjoy that record. I really do enjoy that record a lot. But being honest with myself, I gave the album a 6 out of 10. Just my personal opinion. It did some weird stuff for me that I really just couldn't get into. And Sydney, I would feel bad, but what you said about moving pictures, I don't feel bad anymore.
Oh my goodness, he saw your show about Rush.
I
I'm
did.
gonna live this shit down.
That's
I did.
revenge.
When I saw what she said about
not on, because Chris Allo's never even heard Queen.
He hasn't heard Rumors by Fleetwood Mac.
Wow.
Irrelevant.
Wow.
No, I have heard Rumors now. I'm not that.
Well,
I'm not that.
Thank you. You know, at least I listened to Moving Pictures, and you guys would be proud of me. Sometimes I do listen to Limelight voluntarily. Sometimes. So there's growth happening, okay?
There we go. There we go.
There's a $300 box set waiting for you on Amazon.com, Sydney.
Look, I felt bad because when I seen you was coming on here, I'm like, oh man, now I gotta tell her I don't really like Alice Cooper. And I was like, you know what she said about moving pictures is unforgivable. I'm saying.
No, I respect your opinion. Like I said,
Oh,
this
I'm just, you know, but that's just, but
All right. So which one are you taking home?
oh, I'm going with David Bowie
All
because
right, boy, Bowie's pulling out a lead here.
that album really did interest me a lot. I mean, with
Okay.
David Bowie.
Cool.
So
All right. So we're not playing Schools Out for you, Miles, if you come up here. And
please
know.
don't play it on intercom through your phone where it sounds
no,
like
okay.
Oh my God.
I don't understand that hate, but for Schools Out at least. But all right, so we're gonna send this. We're run a little late long here, so we're gonna send us over to Rand and get me back, and then we'll wrap this episode up.
Yep.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm the oldest, you know. I don't know if the ladies know
Thank
this,
goodness
but
for me. You're the older than I am. Yes.
in September I'll be 70. God,
You're right in the
Wow, we got
rock
a
star
party.
age group
Still
here. All
rocking.
these veteran rock stars. You're
I'm
right
a
in that
rocker.
age group, man.
Gonna have a party.
Anyway, I was in the Air Force in Las Vegas when I first heard about Alice Cooper, and I think the first thing I ever heard by him. Well, actually, let me go back a little bit because I saw a concert in 1970 on TV called the Cincinnati Pop Festival in 1970. And that's where I first heard and saw Alice Cooper, and I was absolutely blown away. And they were doing Black Juju, and they had cake all over the stage, and they had Alice covered up in sort of like tablecloths, and cake was
Yes.
flying all over the place. It was
Cool.
nuts. And I went, I love these guys. They're awesome. And then I bought, when I got in the service, I bought Love It to Death, and then I bought Killer, and they were playing Under My Wheels on the KLUK radio on the FM.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a big hit, you know, and I love Killer. I'm going to come out, tell you right now, it's my favorite Alice Cooper album. I even have the gold CD of it. So then I bought this when it came out, and I had the one that Sydney had with the panties and everything. Of course, I lost that in a trade somewhere. And so to make things scoot along here, I love Schools Out, but I didn't really know the album that well from the time that I owned it back then till now. So I had to get caught up, and I started listening to the songs when I first heard about this contest. And I'm still going to stick with the three that I loved back then. And I love Grand Finale. I think it's freaking awesome.
Oh, nice.
It's Elmer Bernstein and just Leonard's brother. And so, you know, I like West Side Story a lot, and the music that comes out of that. And Yes does some good stuff out of that too. I'm gonna go with number 3 for Grand Finale, and for number 2, Blue Turk.
Okay.
I love Dennis Dunaway's bass part on that. When I first heard that, I went, that is the coolest thing I ever heard. Bob Ezrin's letting that guy play by himself. I think Bob Ezrin is a magician when it comes to music.
Yeah.
He makes Alice sound like these albums should, you know, as opposed to, and you can hear what he does later with Pink Floyd. Oh my God, The Wall. And I'm going to go with Schools Out as my favorite song on this album because it was a radio hit. I learned how to play it on guitar as I was learning how to play guitar. I've been in cover bands that have played it, and I played guitar on it. And Schools Out is a freaking gas to play. It's fun to sing. And I just love that song. And for me, that's a freaking anthem. And I never heard it at my school through their speakers.
Neither did I.
That's unheard of.
Never played it in my school.
My school never would have done that either.
In my school, you would have got classical music or country western. I'm from Eureka, California, folks.
In my school, I remember hearing Stevie Wonder's Superstition. We had a jukebox in the cafeteria for a while, and that song would just be played over and over. But I mean,
my rating for Schools Out, Stephen, and everybody, is I'm going to give this a 9.5.
Okay.
And
Nice.
I also want to show something real quick.
Uh-huh.
What kind of a fan I am.
Nice.
Who has this?
You know,
Oh,
Ralph got
Ralph.
Ralph's holding it
got
up.
I got the
It's
original
two
version.
discs. It's 2 DVDs. It's called Prime Cuts. It's freaking great. If you love the early
Here's
band,
the
this is
original
awesome.
version.
The
Original
what?
version was only one DVD.
Oh, I didn't
they
know
make
that
it-
was. Yeah, and then they
makes it
did
one.
two DVDs. Oh, cool. Anyway, I love it. It's one of my favorite DVDs. It's called Prime Cuts. Love it.
Nice. So what album you bringing home, Rand, from the store? It's my computer just freezes up. Can you hear me? Oh. Hey, hey, hey. Hello. Well, I'm here and it's all froze up.
Oh,
okay.
there you
We can
go.
hear
We
you.
froze
We
up
can
for a
hear you.
second. It says my internet connection's unstable. So Rand, please, what is your one you're taking home?
Oh yeah, it's Alice Cooper for sure.
All right, so since my internet connection's acting up, I better get mine quickly because I don't want to do this thing over. So Alice Cooper, School's Out. Hadn't listened to this record for years, but the songs I'll pick, Blue Turk, I love that song. I love that, but he's doing like the Make My Skin Crawl. I could relate to that song today because this morning I'm sitting on the sofa right here and I'm working on this episode and I feel something crawling on me. It was a tick that little dog Daisy brought in from outside. So my skin has been crawling all day. You know how once you get something like that, you just constantly think you're getting a bug on you all day. So there's my
Even when
relate
people
to
talk
that.
about ticks, I start feeling them like
I've had one in the back of my kneecap one time. This thing's
Okay.
horrible.
Well, anyhow, so I'm gonna go with Blue Turk, Public Animal number 9, and School's Out. I mean, School's Out. I don't care if people think it's played out or not. It's a badass song. I love it.
Yeah,
I'm completely
it's gonna be
different than
forever.
Miles on it. It's when you go to see Alice perform that live still, it's like what he plays at the end of the show. The place goes crazy. And it's you know, the riffs and everything else. It's such a great song. So I'm going with School's Out for number 1. If I'm picking one album out of these two, though, I think the David Bowie album is a more solid album all the way across. I might not have thought this a few days ago. Rose is so happy. Look at her.
I converted you.
Because you know what? I would if I would have picked Cooper, it would have been a tie almost, I think. So if I was doing my math correctly, but listening to it today, and I'm just like, it's got more songs I like on it, you know, with and I left out Starman, which is a great song too. But I'm gonna go with Bowie, and I guess Bowie is going to get the win on this one. Because everybody's not froze up again. I'm hoping we're still live. And I
They
just
are.
think it's a blessing that we still have Alice Cooper performing
Yeah.
though in 2022. Sydney said she just saw him. I saw him recently. I saw him when they played Bethel Woods. I saw him a couple years ago before that when they were warming up Deep Purple, PNC Arts Center. And his show, it's just so great. It's like, you know, he's got all these, you know, he changes the band out over the years, but the lineup he has now, it's great musicians, great show. Of course, the theatrics. My wife is a giant Alice Cooper fan, also David Bowie fan. I guess she would have picked David Bowie also because she actually bought that record and was wanting to listen to it today while I was, you know, doing the review and listening to stuff earlier today. And I'd like to thank everybody on the chat for joining me on the channel tonight, and Sydney for allowing us to steal you away from the radio, and Pete Pardo tonight. And Ryan's has a channel too. I'll put everything in the liner notes. So please, everyone that's watching, please pick your favorite and your favorite Alice Cooper moments or David Bowie stories and put them in the comments below. The first time I saw Alice Cooper, I just wanted to make a note of that, was at the Mid-Hudson Civic Center. It was way back, I think around 1980. I think it was Flush the Fashion, where maybe. Yeah.
Wow.
And we had the worst seats. The Civic Center used to have those darn plastic chairs. We were way in the back, standing on top of plastic chairs. to watch that show. And it wasn't a great experience, but that was the first time I saw Alice. And of course, I've seen him a bunch of times over the year. Anytime I get a chance to see him, I would go, and I recommend anyone out there, if you haven't witnessed Alice Cooper live, make sure you go see him. And it's just a blessing that he is still performing at his level, at his age. And, you know, he does a lot of great charities too. We worked with one of his charities in Rock Fantasy a while back. And maybe Sydney knows the name, but I can't quite remember the top of my head.
Solid Rock?
Yes, yes. They did something with us. We actually ran pinball tournaments, and I still have some of the prizes here. They sent me and they're like some posters. It was he did something called Christmas pudding, I think.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a fundraiser he does every December for Solid Rock.
So you know, they sent us some hats and whatnot. He used to have the Cooperstown bar in Cleveland, and I actually went there once. Me and Ryan Scow were there, and Doro Pesh did a acoustic performance. It was during a metal fest that was going on in Cleveland at the time. And in the Cooperstown that was in Arizona, I think it might have closed. They used to do the pinball finals there for that pinball contest that was part of the Solid Ball of Rock there thing. So it's great. And I'd like to thank everybody for joining us tonight. And we'll see you next time on the Rock Fantasy YouTube channel. Please hit like, subscribe, and do all that stuff. Bang.
Have a good one.